At my granddaughter's baptism, my daughter-in-law leaned over during the final blessing, looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and whispered, "Maybe it's time you step aside." I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, but because it did. And I knew then, with absolute clarity, that I would never allow her or my son to treat me like a placeholder again. That smile wasn't submission. It was restraint. I stayed until the end of the ceremony. I held my hands clasped tightly in front of me and stood quietly as people filed out of the church. I kissed my granddaughter's forehead before anyone could stop me, looked into those baby eyes that hadn't yet learned what family loyalty really meant, and walked away with dignity. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. But the whole ride home, my fingers ached from the grip I had on the steering. Bill. My mind kept repeating that sentence over and over. Maybe it's time you step aside. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was deliberate, calculated. She wanted me to hear it, but only me. That way she could deny it if I ever brought it up. My son, Mark, stood beside her the entire time, holding their daughter proudly, like he had no idea what had just happened. Maybe he didn't, but I doubted it. They had been pulling away from me slowly for years. It started with canceled lunches, then fewer calls, then last-minute holiday plans. But I always found a way to justify it. They were busy. Life was hectic. The baby needed their full attention. I accepted those excuses because that's what you do when you love your child. You swallow the small humiliations in the hope they're just temporary. But that moment in the church, it wasn't temporary. It was confirmation. I got home and poured myself a cup of tea, even though my hands were shaking too much to hold the mug steady. I sat in the same chair I always sat in, the one across from the fireplace, and let the silence wrap around me. Not the comforting kind of silence, the kind that echoes. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I opened my folder, the one I kept in the cabinet under the printer. Inside it were 3 documents: the mortgage account for their house, the auto insurance policy for their SUV, and the transfer I'd been making monthly to cover their daycare tuition. I stared at the numbers like they belonged to someone else. $119.42. That was the monthly mortgage I had been paying since they fell on hard times after Mark's job loss 2 years ago. $189 was the monthly car insurance, $690, the daycare. They never asked me to stop, and I never asked for thanks. The first time I offered to help, they cried. Mark said I was a lifesaver, that he didn't know what they would have done without me. Heather, my daughter-in-law, hugged me and promised they'd pay me back. I said not to worry about it. I wanted them to get back on their feet. I didn't ask for anything in return, but apparently offering stability made me disposable. I started going back in my mind, connecting dots I hadn't wanted to see before. The way Heather always forgot to include me in group texts with her family, how they invited her parents for every birthday, holiday, vacation, and only remembered to call me on the day of with a rushed, "You're still coming, right?" The Christmas dinner where there wasn't a seat set for me at the main table, so I ate at the kitchen island while everyone else toasted champagne in the dining room. The time Heather told me she didn't like when I held the baby too long. She needs to bond more with us, she had said, as if I was stealing something. Even Mark had changed. My son, who used to call me every Sunday, now sent one-word replies to my texts. Busy. Later. Okay. That night, after the baptism, I didn't sleep. I just lay there with my eyes open, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. The next morning, I called the bank. One quiet call. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain anything. I simply said, "I'd like to stop." The automatic mortgage payments on the account ending in 1042, effective immediately. The woman on the line asked me if I was sure. I'm sure. It was done in less than 5 minutes. She looked around, confused at first, then smiled when she saw me. I opened the gate. Mark walked up the path, carrying her carefully. "Hey," he said. "We were out for a drive. Olivia asked for you." I nodded and opened the door. "Come, in." Inside, I offered juice. I didn't overthink it. I didn't ask about Heather or their bills or their house. I just sat on the floor with Olivia while she played with a box of wooden blocks I had almost donated last month. Mark sat on the couch, quiet, watching. He looked more tired than before, but something was different this time. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't looking for a handout. After a while, he cleared his throat. "I started picking up extra shifts. Heather's working 2 days from home now." I nodded. "That's good." "We're behind," he said. "But we're figuring it out." I didn't offer money. He didn't ask. "I want Olivia to know you," he added. "Whatever happened between us, I don't want it to affect her." I met his eyes. "Then make sure she sees you treat people with respect. That's how she'll learn." He didn't argue. He just nodded. After an hour, he stood to go. Olivia gave me a hug, clumsy and sweet, her small arms tight around my neck. Mark didn't linger. He walked to the car, buckled her in, and gave a small wave before driving off. I went back inside and cleaned up the toys. The visit had been short, nothing dramatic, no tears, no demands. Just a small, quiet step in the right direction. Over the next month, it became a routine. Mark brought Olivia over every other Saturday, sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer. Heather never came. I didn't ask why. One Saturday, I got a knock at the door. It was just past 10 a.m. I opened it expecting Mark, but it was Olivia, with Heather standing behind her. "I was running errands nearby," Heather said, and Olivia insisted on coming. I looked at Heather. She didn't look angry, just tired, not from lack of sleep, but from something deeper. "I won't stay," she added. "I'll pick her up in an hour?" I nodded and stepped aside. Olivia walked in like she belonged there. Heather hesitated before turning to leave. "Thanks," she said quietly. That was it. That visit marked something new. A shift I hadn't expected but welcomed. Not reconciliation, not warmth, but respect, or maybe just the start of it. A few days later, I got a card in the mail, handwritten. No envelope markings, just left in my mailbox. It was from Heather. "I've been thinking about how things unfolded. I still don't agree with everything, but I understand now how much we relied on you without ever stopping to ask how you felt. I'm sorry. I hope Olivia gets to know the kind of person you really are. No signature beyond her name, no dramatic apology. But it was something. And for me, that was enough." I pinned the card to the side of the fridge, not as a trophy, just as a reminder that some boundaries, once set, hold. That some people, once forced to stand on their own, learn how to do it. One afternoon, while organizing old boxes in the garage, I found a folder labeled Baptism Olivia. Inside were printed photos, the program from the ceremony, and a card I had written but never given them. It was a simple note, welcoming Olivia into the world, saying how proud I was to be her grandmother. I kept it. That baptism, what started as the final push that broke everything, had become something else. Not the beginning of loss, but the start of change. It forced me to see the truth. It gave me the push to stop letting people chip away at me in the name of family. It opened space in my life for peace, and it showed Mark and Heather that I wasn't someone to lean on endlessly. I was someone to respect or step away from. I still live in the same house, still tend to my little garden, still drink my coffee at the same table every morning. But now, no part of my life is tied to someone else's control. And the best part? The silence I once feared has turned into peace. I won't trade for anything. I brought it so you could see it. Because I think somewhere along the line, you convinced yourselves I didn't really do all that much. Mark picked up the folder, glanced through a few pages, and set it back down. I let the silence stretch. Do. You remember last Thanksgiving? I asked. They didn't answer. You asked me to bring dessert. I made 2 pies. I brought wine. I offered to babysit while you both talked to Heather's parents in the kitchen. When I finally sat down, all the seats at the table were taken. No one even offered to scoot over. Mark rubbed his forehead. Mom, come on. We didn't mean— I know, I said. You never mean it. You just do it, over and over. Heather's voice was tight. We've had a lot on our plate. We have a toddler. We've been in survival mode. And you assumed I'd just keep filling in the gaps, I said. That I'd keep paying. Keep babysitting. Keep saying yes. No one forced you, she shot back. I nodded. You're right. No one forced me. I did it because I thought I was family. I thought that meant something. Mark finally sat down. His shoulders were slumped now, the confidence drained. I think we thought you were okay with it, he muttered. You never said anything. You never asked, I replied. Not once. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't ask if I needed anything. You didn't ask if the help should end. You just assumed it would keep coming. Heather looked down at her lap. Mark looked at the floor. I leaned forward. You want to know what this is about? It's not about the mortgage. It's not about the insurance. It's not about Olivia's school. It's about respect. Mark looked up. It's about the way you talk to me, the way you talk about me, the way you forget me until you need something. No one forgot you, Heather whispered. You forgot I was a person, I said. You treated me like a line item in your budget. Mark exhaled hard. So what now? You just walk away? No, I said. I move forward. And whether or not you're part of that depends on how you behave going forward. Heather glanced at Mark, like she was waiting for him to speak first. But he didn't. She did. So what does that mean? It means I won't be paying your bills, I said. But I'll be here if you want to talk, to visit, to rebuild a relationship. And Olivia? Mark asked quietly. She's always welcome here, I said. But I won't be used as leverage. I'm not going to fight to see her. If you want me in her life, make that choice. Heather didn't answer. Mark nodded slowly. Okay. We sat in silence for another moment. I stood up. Thanks for inviting me over. Heather didn't speak. Mark followed me to the door. Mom, he said before I stepped outside. We didn't realize how far this had gone. I'm sorry. I paused, then nodded. Thank you. I walked to my car without looking back. By the time I got home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not sadness, clarity. For the first time, the roles were reversed. They had asked for a meeting. They had asked for answers, and I had given them all. The next few weeks were quiet. There were no more calls from Mark, no follow-up messages from Heather, no new bills arriving in my mailbox with their names on them. At first, I expected the silence to feel heavy. I had spent so many years waiting for the next emergency, the next favor disguised as a casual request. But the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space, like breathing room. I could finally go a full day without bracing for someone else's problem to land at my feet. I started spending more time outside. I joined a walking group at the local park on weekday mornings. Most of the women were around my age, some retired, some still working part-time. We didn't talk much about family, and that was a relief. No one asked about my son. No one mentioned grandkids. We just walked, talked about books, recipes, movies. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I had to carry someone else's weight. A couple of Saturdays later, I was out back in the yard trimming the lavender bushes when I heard a car pull up. I stepped around to the front just as Mark got out of the driver's seat. Olivia was in the back, still strapped into her car seat. Heather wasn't with them. Mark looked unsure as he lifted Olivia from the car. She had grown a little since I'd last seen her. A few new curls around her face, a brighter smile. Says I should have tried harder to keep your help. that I should have swallowed my pride and apologized sooner. Should you have? I asked. He sat down finally. I don't know. I waited. You were always there, he said. Even when I didn't deserve it. You paid for everything without asking for anything. And when you stopped, I panicked. I didn't know how to fix it. I still don't. I nodded once. But you know what hurt the most? He said. You just cut us off. No warning. You didn't even talk to me about it. I looked at him. When was the last time you talked to me without needing something? He blinked. I didn't cut you off. You cut me out. You just kept my money. He lowered his head. I guess I did. There was a long pause before he spoke again. Do you still want to see Olivia? It felt like a trap, like an offer disguised as a threat. I always want to see Olivia, I said. But not if it comes with conditions. He nodded slowly. I'm not giving you money, I said, clear and calm. But if you ever want to come here with Olivia for dinner, for a visit, not to borrow, not to ask, but just to be here, you're welcome. He didn't respond right away. He just sat with that. Then he stood. I should go. He left without hugging me. That night, I locked the front door, turned off the lights, and went to bed with a heavy, quiet certainty. Their house would fall. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but soon, because it wasn't built on stability. It was built on borrowed time and someone else's sacrifice. And that someone, me, was done. I got the text on a Sunday evening, right after I finished folding laundry. It was from Mark. Mark. We'd like to talk. Can you come to the house Tuesday night? 7:30. I stared at it for a while. He said we, not I. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a united front. Mark and Heather standing together in the middle of their collapsing world, trying to pin something on me. I didn't respond immediately. I made myself a cup of coffee. I sat down. I watched the last 10 minutes of a show I wasn't even paying attention to. Then I answered, me. I'll be there. I wasn't walking into a trap. I was walking into closure. When I arrived Tuesday evening, the front door was open. Olivia's toys were scattered on the porch, plastic blocks, a doll stroller, one small shoe, no sign of the child herself, no sign of laughter, no energy in the house. Heather opened the door fully when she saw me pull up. She didn't smile, just gave a short nod and moved aside. Thanks for coming, she said, like she was offering me a meeting slot instead of welcoming her husband's mother into her home. Mark was already in the living room. The lights were dim. The coffee table had no cups, no snacks, no sign of effort. Just space. I sat on the edge of the couch. Neither of them joined me. Mark leaned against the wall. Heather crossed her arms and stood near the TV stand. There was no pretense this time, no small talk, no pleasantries. Mark cleared his throat. We want to know what this is really about. I didn't answer yet, because it feels like this is bigger than money, he said. You just shut everything off, overnight, and we're left trying to pick up the pieces. I tilted my head slightly. Did it really feel sudden to you? Mark shifted his weight. I mean, yeah. We knew things were a little tense. But we didn't expect you to go nuclear. Heather jumped in. You didn't just stop paying. You cut contact. You blocked Mark's number for 2 weeks. You wouldn't answer me. You told the daycare to send us the bill like it was some legal dispute. I nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Mark frowned. So, why now? Why like this? I looked at both of them. Neither one seemed ready to hear what I had to say. But I said it anyway. Because I spent 2 years quietly holding up your life. And all it got me was distance, silence, and one humiliating sentence in a church. Heather's jaw tightened. You're still stuck on that? Yes, I said. Because it wasn't the first time. It was just the final one. I pulled a small folder from my purse and placed it on the table. What's that? Mark asked. Receipts, I said. Mortgage, insurance, daycare. Month after month. I printed just the totals. No breakdown, No itemization. Just a reminder. Heather crossed her arms tighter. You brought proof? To shame us? No, I said. The balance due was nearly $4,000. 2 months past due. I left it on the counter, made myself a sandwich, and sat down at the table with the mail still in view. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel guilty. I felt ready. Like this moment had been circling for a long time, and now it had landed exactly where it needed to. By Wednesday, there was another envelope. This time it was from the car insurance company. Lapsed payment, policy cancellation pending. Mark's name on the account, my former billing information blurred out in the small print. That same day, the daycare center called me. Hi, Mrs. Harper. This is Lisa from Small Steps Preschool. I'm so sorry to call, but I wanted to confirm that you're no longer the payer for Olivia's tuition. We haven't received an update yet, and the payment is now overdue. I cleared my throat. Yes, I'm no longer responsible for that payment. Please direct all billing to the parents going forward. The woman paused. Understood. Thank you. We'll reach out to them. By Friday, I was receiving text messages again. First from Mark. Mark. Are you getting copies of the mortgage letters? We're 2 months behind. Can you help just this one time? I stared at that last line. Just this one time. After 2 years and over $70,000, he had the nerve to frame it as a first request. I didn't reply. Not immediately. I gave myself space to breathe. An hour later, Heather messaged me. Heather, daycare said you confirmed you're no longer paying. We've been scrambling all week. We're trying to catch up. We just need a little more time. Still no apologies. Still no acknowledgement of how they had used me. The next morning, I sent one message to both of them, copied into the same thread. Me, you are both adults with jobs and a family. I was willing to help for a time, and I did more than most would. But this isn't my responsibility. It never should have been. Mark responded first. Mark, so you're just walking away? You're letting us drown because you didn't like something Heather said at church? I felt my jaw tighten. Me, no. I'm walking away because you expected me to drown with you. I've already paid the price for your decisions. Now it's your turn. That ended the conversation for the weekend. 2 days later, my sister-in-law called me, Judy. We hadn't spoken much in recent years, mostly because every time we were in the same room, she made subtle remarks about how I was too involved in Mark and Heather's life. She always had something critical to say, usually under the guise of concern. Hi, she began. I heard things are a little strained between you and Mark. I stayed quiet, waiting for the real reason for her call. I just think, maybe, you're taking this too personally, she said. I know you helped them out, and I'm sure they appreciate it. But at the end of the day, they're young parents trying to figure things out. Isn't it better to just let it go? It's family, I responded calmly. I did let it go. I let go of paying for their mortgage, their car, their daycare, and every emergency that somehow became my problem. I let go of being taken for granted. There was silence on the other end of the line. I'm not punishing them, I said. I'm just not saving them anymore. She ended the call shortly after, and I didn't hear from her again. That week, I stayed busy. I took a class at the community center on growing herbs in small gardens. I went to lunch with an old coworker I hadn't seen in months. I cleaned out the guest bedroom and donated 3 bags of clothing I no longer wore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just didn't want to sit around waiting for the next message, the next guilt trip, the next manufactured crisis. But the next one came anyway. On Thursday night, my doorbell rang. It was past 8 p.m. I was already in my pajamas. When I looked through the peephole, Mark was standing there, alone this time. I opened the door slowly. It's late, I know, he said. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside and he came in. He looked tired. His face was tight, jaw clenched, but there was no panic, just frustration. We're going to lose the house, he said, standing in the middle of my living room like he didn't know where to sit. We've already missed 2 payments. Heather's parents gave us a little, but they're tapped out now. I said nothing. I didn't want to interrupt him. She's blaming me, he continued. It didn't bother me the way I thought it might. Instead, it confirmed what I had suspected for a long time. He didn't think he owed me anything more than a courtesy update. That voicemail wasn't love. It was logistics. The next day, I deleted the voicemail and blocked the number. It wasn't an impulsive move. I thought about it. A lot. Blocking your own child isn't something you do lightly. But I had spent too many years being available at all hours for someone who only reached out when they were short on rent or needed someone to babysit last minute. I wasn't doing it anymore. On Friday afternoon, I got a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole before opening it. It was Heather, alone. I opened the door halfway. "I just want to talk," she said. Her tone was flat, like someone forcing themselves to be polite. "Please." I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in like she owned the place. That hadn't changed. "I know you're upset," she started, standing in the middle of the living room like she didn't want to sit. "But cutting off the payments like that, it put us in a really hard position." I didn't respond. I waited. I mean, Mark's job isn't back to full salary, and I've been trying to get more hours at the firm, but with the baby and everything, it's hard. And then we had to ask my parents for help, which was humiliating, honestly. They look at us like we're failing. I sat down. She remained standing. Her voice got tighter. "I'm not saying you had to keep paying forever, but some notice would have helped." I kept my voice calm. "When I offered help 2 years ago, you said you appreciated it. You both did, and I gave without asking for anything back. No deadlines, no terms." She nodded, but I could see the impatience building. "But when I decided to stop," I continued, "there wasn't a conversation. There wasn't even a question. Because you never asked again. You assumed." Heather opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. "I paid almost $70,000 in 2 years. I never brought it up until now. I never complained. I was happy to help. But then you stood beside me in that church and whispered that it was time I step aside." Heather's face went red. "That's not how I meant it." "How you meant it doesn't matter," I said. "It's how you said it, and how often that same attitude has shown up in other ways." She sat down across from me, for the first time since arriving. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "But you've made things really hard, for Mark especially. He feels like you abandoned us." I laughed once, short. "You think I abandoned you? After everything I've done?" Heather looked down. I think he's just realizing what you were doing all this time." "He should have realized it while I was doing it," I said. "Not after the money stopped." She didn't respond. She just nodded slowly. After a long silence, she stood up. "I don't know what to say. I didn't come here to fight. We didn't expect this." "I know," I said. "That's the point." She walked to the door. Before she opened it, she turned around. "If you ever want to see your granddaughter again," she said, "I hope you'll think about how far you're taking this." I didn't flinch. "That's up to Mark, not me." She left without saying goodbye. That evening, I sat on the porch and watched the sun dip behind the neighbor's trees. I thought about what she said, about my granddaughter. I loved that little girl more than words could express. But I couldn't keep buying my place in her life. If Heather and Mark wanted to use her as leverage, that was their choice. I wasn't going to beg. I had already stepped aside, just not in the way they expected. And now, they were finally starting to feel what that meant. The first late notice arrived on a Monday afternoon. It was a yellow envelope, clearly marked urgent, action required. I knew exactly what it was the moment I saw the return address, the mortgage lender Mark and Heather used. I stood at the mailbox a minute longer than I needed to, the envelope in my hand. Even though the payments were no longer my responsibility, they still had my mailing address listed as the original guarantor. I had co-signed with them during the refinancing, one of those temporary arrangements I was assured would be resolved once Mark's job stabilized. That had been 2 years. I opened it in the kitchen with my scissors, more out of habit than necessity. I didn't do this to punish you, I continued. I did this because you showed me, very clearly, that my place in your life comes with a dollar amount. Mark frowned. This is about what Heather said at the baptism, isn't it? She told me to step aside, I said. So I did. Heather flushed. That was taken out of context. No, I said. It wasn't. There was a long pause. Mark looked down at his feet, like a child who didn't want to admit he'd done something wrong. We're not in a great place financially, he muttered. The timing is just bad. The timing was never good, I said, but I always showed up, and you never noticed. He opened his mouth to argue, but I stopped him. I didn't cancel the payments to hurt you. I did it to help myself. Heather looked ready to say something snide, but Mark put a hand on her arm. She bit her lip and looked away. I'll get it sorted, he finally said. Thanks for letting us know, I guess. They left without hugging me, without apologizing. I stood on the porch long after they were gone. That night, I didn't sleep much. But I didn't feel guilt either. Just tired. Tired in the kind of way that doesn't go away with rest. The kind that comes from years of giving without receiving. The next morning, I woke up and made a list of everything I had been putting off for the last decade. A weekend trip to the coast, that painting class at the senior center. Finally fixing the broken latch on the back gate. I wasn't waiting on anyone anymore. Heather's parents could help them now. I had done enough, and for the first time in years, I started to remember what it felt like to choose myself. The Monday. After Mark and Heather showed up at my door, I got a call from the mortgage company. They politely informed me that the auto debit had been canceled and the account was now overdue. I confirmed that the payments were no longer my responsibility. The woman on the line paused, then said, "We'll reach out to the listed borrowers. Thank you." That was it. No emotion. Just business. I hung up and went back to cleaning out the cabinet under the sink. There was a slow leak I had been ignoring for weeks. I didn't call anyone to fix it. I just dealt with it, quietly, like I had done with everything else for the past several years. By Thursday, I hadn't heard a word from Mark or Heather. No updates, no apologies, not even a request for help. And that silence confirmed what I had started to believe. They didn't want me back. They just wanted my help. So I kept going. That morning, I logged into the shared auto insurance account one last time, just to make sure my payment method had been removed. It had. Their new card hadn't been added yet. I closed the tab and deleted the account from my bookmarks. Afterward, I called the daycare center, not to reverse anything, but to double-check that the billing issue had been communicated properly. They confirmed it had. I thanked them and hung up. And then, I cleared out the top drawer in the kitchen, the one filled with extra receipts, emergency contacts, old birthday party invites. In it, I found 2 unused grandma photo frames. One still had the price sticker on the back, $7.49 from the gift shop at the aquarium. I had bought them during a day trip with Mark and Heather and the baby, thinking I'd get a printed picture of us 3 together to put inside. I never got that photo. Instead of crying, I boxed them up and placed them with the rest of the donation items in the hallway closet. That Saturday, I dropped everything off at the local Goodwill. No one asked why I was donating new items. They just smiled and took the box. By the next week, I had started reorganizing my bedroom. Not because anything was wrong with it, but because I needed to feel like something in my life was being put back in order, something I controlled. I took down the pictures of Mark as a child, not out of anger, but because I needed space. I replaced them with prints of landscapes, sunlight through trees, the Oregon coast, a quiet garden path. That Tuesday, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then I got a voicemail. It was Mark. "Hey, Mom. I guess you're not picking up. Look, I know things have been tense. I just wanted to say we're working on fixing the mortgage situation. Heather's parents are helping for now. I didn't want you to worry. Anyway, yeah, that's it. No, thank you. No, sorry. Just a report. Then I logged into the insurance portal and removed my credit card from their policy. After that, I canceled the auto payment to the daycare and called them personally. Please notify the parents that their payment method is no longer valid. They'll need to update it. I was calm the entire time. My hands didn't shake anymore. No one noticed anything that first day, or the second, but I knew they would. And I wasn't going to warn them. They hadn't warned me before humiliating me in that church. The first message came 3 days after the baptism. Mark sent it around 8:20 a.m. Mark, hey, did the bank mess up the mortgage transfer? Just got a notice it bounced. I stared at the screen. There was no good morning, no how are you, just a casual assumption that some external force had made a mistake, that I would fix it. I didn't reply right away. I let the silence linger. He followed up 3 minutes later. Mark, did you cancel it? Is everything okay? I replied with 2 sentences. Me, everything is fine. I thought it was time for you and Heather to handle your own expenses. No emojis, no explanation, just truth. He didn't reply, and that silence said more than words ever could. That evening I sat at my kitchen table sipping tea that had gone cold, and I pulled out my ledger. I wasn't obsessive, but I always kept track of the basics. On a single notepad, I had scribbled down every payment I had made for Mark and Heather since the first time they asked for help. Mortgage payments, 23 months, $1,942 each insurance premiums, 21 months, $189 each daycare support, 15 months, $690 each groceries, holidays, birthday gifts, emergency money. Untracked, just the consistent payments alone totaled over $70,000. I had never told them the total, never asked for repayment. I assumed they understood the weight of that kind of help, but I had started to realize they never thought about it at all. The second message came the next day, this time from Heather. Heather, hi, we're a little confused. The bank says the mortgage hasn't been paid. Can you check? I read it 3 times before responding. Me. Yes, that's correct. Heather. I'm not following. What do you mean, that's correct? Did something happen? Me. No. I just decided it was time to step aside. I don't know if she realized I was echoing her words from the baptism, but I did. A few hours later, the calls started. First Mark, then Heather. I didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to explain myself to people who had spent the last 2 years treating me like a spare part in their lives. They didn't call me to say thank you when I paid. They only called now, because something was missing. That weekend, I saw their names flash across my phone 5 different times. Still, I didn't answer. Instead, I made myself breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, and sat outside in the small garden I had built after I retired. It was the first Saturday morning in years that I wasn't thinking about what they needed from me. It was quiet, peaceful. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Mark stood there, arms folded, face tense. Heather was a step behind him, arms crossed, wearing sunglasses despite the cloudy sky. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Mom, Mark started. What's going on? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. My son, the baby I carried, the boy I raised alone after his father left, the man I supported through 2 layoffs and a failed business, the husband I helped carry when he couldn't carry himself. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Heather was the first to lose her temper. You could have told us, she snapped. We were blindsided this week. I didn't realize I owed you a warning, I said, keeping my voice flat. Mark raised a hand as if to mediate. Come on, Mom. We're not trying to fight. We thought this was something we could count on. And I thought I was family, I said quietly. That shut them both up. Mark shifted. You are. Of course you are. No, I said. I was a resource, not a relative. You two have made that perfectly clear. Heather scoffed. That's not fair. We've always included you. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, standing on the porch with them. Tell me the last time you invited me to dinner without it being a holiday, or the last time you asked how I was, or thanked me. Neither of them said anything.